It's 2:47 a.m. Rain is slamming against the windows like bullets. The streets of Flushing, Queens are empty except for the glow of neon signs reflecting in puddles. Inside the Golden Dragon 24-hour Korean barbecue, the air smells of charred kalbi, sesame oil, and exhaustion. Yvette Anderson, a 25-year-old black waitress with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense stride, is wiping down the counter after the last drunk customer stumbles out. She's bone-tired. Single mom energy even though she has no kids yet. Just bills, a tiny apartment in Jamaica, Queens, and dreams that feel further away every year. Her mother raised her tough in bed Stewie after her dad disappeared into the system. Yvette learned young. Smile, serve, survive, and never trust strangers after midnight. The bell above the door rings. In walks a little boy, no older than 6, completely soaked. Expensive navy coat hanging off his small frame, leather shoes ruined by the storm. His straight black hair sticks to his forehead. But those eyes, sharp, ancient, holding secrets no child should carry. He walks straight to Yvette, ignoring the empty tables. "Miss," he says in clear, steady English, "can you walk me home?" Yvette freezes. No parent. No driver. No explanation. Just this tiny boy in the middle of a dangerous night asking a stranger for help. Her gut screams danger. Her heart says something else. She kneels down. "Baby, where's your mama?" "She's sleeping," he answers carefully. "My ride never showed. I got lost after my lesson." Outside, thunder cracks. The boy's tiny hand reaches for hers. She had no idea she was holding the hand of Dong Hyun, the only heir to Lee Kang-min, the most feared and secretive Korean Mafia boss operating from New York to Seoul. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments. And tell me honestly, what would you have done if a soaked little boy asked you to walk him home at 3 a.m. in the rain? Let me know below. Let me take you back to understand who Yvette Anderson really was before that rainy night changed everything. September 2015. Flushing, Queens. The heart of one of New York City's largest Korean communities, where neon signs advertise karaoke rooms and 24-hour restaurants, where the subway rumbles overhead on Roosevelt Avenue, and where people from 100 different countries somehow make it work side by side. Yvette Anderson wasn't supposed to end up here. She'd grown up in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy to anyone who knows, in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment that always smelled like her mother's cooking and the mildew that wouldn't quit no matter how much bleach they used. Her mother, Patricia Anderson, cleaned houses in Manhattan for families who barely looked at her. Her father, Marcus, had been a postal worker with big dreams and a gambling problem that got bigger. Yvette was 12 when the cops came. Fraud. Embezzlement. Desperation that turned into felonies. She remembered her mother's face that night, not crying, just stone. Just surviving. "Baby," Patricia had said, gripping Yvette's shoulders in the hallway while the officers searched their apartment. "You remember this. You don't never depend on nobody but yourself. You hear me? Nobody." Yvette heard. She worked her way through high school, tutoring, babysitting, weekend shifts at a laundromat. She got into Queens College with a partial scholarship, dreamed of business school, pictured herself opening a cafe someday. Something warm. Something that belonged to her. But dreams cost money. And money meant work. By 25, Yvette had cycled through a dozen service jobs. The Golden Dragon 24-hour Korean barbecue wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. The owner, Mrs. Kim, was fair if you showed up on time and didn't steal. The tips were decent on weekends when drunk college kids stumbled in at 4 a.m. craving pork belly and soju. The graveyard shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Thursday through Monday, paid an extra $2 an hour. Yvette took it. She worked alongside Simone Baptiste, her best friend since community college. Simone was Haitian, loud, funny, perpetually dating the wrong guys, and the only person who could make Yvette actually laugh during the dead hours when time seemed to stop. "Girl, you see table 6? Simone would whisper, nodding toward some business type in an expensive suit slurping ox bone soup alone at 3 a.m. That's a whole episode of Dateline waiting to happen. Yvette would roll her eyes, but she'd smile. The routine was numbing but safe. Clock in. Tie the black apron. Smile at the regulars. Mr. Park, who always ordered the same spicy tofu stew, the college kids who tipped in crumpled singles, the cab drivers who needed coffee strong enough to taste like revenge. Wipe tables. Refill banchan. Dodge the handsy drunk guys. Count tips. Clock out. Take the Q23 bus to Jamaica, Queens, climb 3 flights to her studio apartment, deadbolt the door, collapse. Wake up. Do it again. Her apartment was a shoebox. 400 square feet. A mattress on the floor because she couldn't afford a bed frame yet. A mini fridge that hummed too loud. Windows that faced a brick wall. Cockroaches she'd named after ex-boyfriends because at least it gave her something to laugh about when she hunted them at 2 p.m. in her underwear. She sent money to her mother every month. Patricia had moved to a slightly better place in Crown Heights, still cleaned houses, still had that stone face. They talked on Sundays. Short calls. Updates, not feelings. Yvette had learned not to expect softness from the world. She dated here and there. Nothing stuck. Men either wanted too much or gave too little. She'd learned to spot the players, the broke ones pretending otherwise, the ones who'd ghost after 3 dates. She stopped trying so hard. Started focusing on her savings account instead. $3,000. That's what she'd managed to save in 2 years. It sat in a checking account at Chase, growing at a pace that felt like watching paint dry. But it was hers. Untouchable. Her dream, vague and shimmering on the horizon, was a cafe. Something cozy. Maybe in Fort Greene or Prospect Heights where the rent was creeping up but the vibe was still real. She'd serve good coffee, fresh pastries, have poetry readings on Thursday nights. She'd hire people like her. Give them a fair shot. But $3,000 wouldn't even cover first month, last month, and security deposit. So she kept pouring Calbee marinades and smiling at strangers and pretending her feet didn't ache like she'd walked on broken glass. The night it happened, that rainy night in late September, started like any other. Yvette clocked in at 11 p.m. The restaurant was packed. It was Friday rolling into Saturday and Flushing came alive on weekends. Korean businessmen celebrating deals. College kids pre-gaming before the clubs. Families with squirmy children somehow still awake at midnight. Simone was working the floor with her, moving between tables like she was dancing, flirting with the cooks in Korean she'd picked up phonetically, pocketing tips with a grin. "Yo, vet," she said around 1 a.m., sliding past with a tray of sizzling beef. "Table 9 just left me a 20 on a $30 check. I think I'm in love." "You always in love," Yvette shot back. The rush died down around 2 a.m. Mrs. Kim had left at midnight, leaving the night manager, a perpetually exhausted college dropout named Danny, to close up. He spent most of his shift in the back playing mobile games. By 2:30, the last customers were filtering out. A drunk couple arguing in slurred Korean. A solo dude who'd been nursing the same beer for an hour. Yvette started her closing routine. Wiping down counters. Refilling soy sauce bottles. Checking the bathrooms for anything gross. The rain had started around 1 a.m., light at first, then heavier. By 2:45, it was a full storm. Thunder rolling through the sky. Lightning cracking bright enough to see through the front windows. Simone had finished her section and was in the back, counting her tips. Yvette was alone in the front, wiping down the last table near the window when she heard it. The bell above the door. She looked up, already forming the words, "Sorry, we're closing," but they died in her throat. Because standing there, dripping rainwater onto the tile floor, was a little boy. No older than 6. Maybe 7, but small for his age. Soaked to the bone. His navy pea coat, clearly expensive with gold buttons, hung heavy with water. His black leather shoes squelched with every step. His straight black hair plastered to his forehead. But it was his eyes that stopped her cold. Dark. Steady. Like he'd seen things. Understood things. Carried weight no child should know. He didn't look scared. He looked determined. He walked straight toward her, ignoring the empty tables, ignoring the rain dripping off him, ignoring everything except her face. And when he reached the counter where she stood frozen, dish towel still in her hand, he looked up at her and spoke in perfect, careful English. "Miss," he said, his voice small but clear, "can you walk me home?" Time stopped. Yvette's brain went into overdrive. Every alarm bell her mother ever installed in her head started ringing at once. Strange child. Middle of the night. Storm. No adult in sight. This was a setup. Had to be. Human trafficking bait. Kidnapping scheme. Some sick test. She glanced toward the back, hoping Simone would appear, but the kitchen door stayed closed. The boy stood there waiting. Patient. Like he had all the time in the world. "Baby," Yvette said slowly, crouching down to his level, Where's your mama? Your daddy? My mother is sleeping, he answered. The same careful tone. Like he'd rehearsed it. My driver was supposed to pick me up from my lesson, but he never came. I walked, but I got lost. Lesson. At almost 3 a.m.? Yvette's eyes scanned him again. The coat was Burberry. She'd seen enough designer knockoffs to recognize the real thing. The shoes were handmade leather. Even soaked, his clothes probably cost more than she made in a month. What kind of lesson? She asked. Piano, he said simply. At 3 in the morning? My teacher keeps late hours. No hesitation. Like this was perfectly normal. Yvette felt a headache forming. Baby, I need to call somebody. Your parents, the police, somebody. No police. His voice sharpened. Just a fraction. But enough to make her pause. Please. There was something in his eyes. Not fear exactly. More like calculation. This kid was 6 years old and he was calculating. What the hell? What's your name? Yvette asked. Donghyun, he said. Then, softer. But you can call me Minnie if you want. Americans always have trouble with my name. Despite everything, Yvette almost smiled. Minnie? Like the mouse. My piano teacher calls me that. Outside, thunder cracked so loud the windows rattled. The rain intensified, sheets of water visible in the streetlights. Minnie flinched just slightly and Yvette saw it. The crack in the armor. He was still just a kid. A scared kid trying to be brave. Her heart twisted. Minnie, she said gently, I can't just walk you home without knowing where you live or who's waiting for you. What if something happened? What if you got hurt? I'd be responsible. Nothing will happen, he said with eerie certainty. You'll be safe. I promise. How could a 6-year-old promise that? Yvette stood up, pulling out her phone. I'm calling? Please. He reached out, his small hand wrapping around her wrist. His fingers were ice cold. Shaking. Please. Just walk with me. It's not far. 10 minutes. My house has a gold tiger on the gate. You'll see. And then you can leave. Please. His voice cracked on the last word. Yvette looked down at this tiny boy in his expensive coat, shivering, alone, and she felt her resolve crumbling. She thought of herself at that age. Her father already gone. Her mother working 3 jobs. Coming home to an empty apartment. Knowing what it felt like to be small and powerless. Damn it, she whispered. She grabbed her jacket from behind the counter. Called back toward the kitchen. Simone. I'll be back in 20 minutes. What? Simone's voice distant. 20 minutes. She looked down at Minnie. You stay right next to me. You hold my hand the whole time. And if anything feels wrong, anything, we turn around. Deal? He nodded solemnly. She pushed open the door and the storm hit them like a wall. The rain was brutal. Cold. Sideways. Within seconds, Yvette was soaked through her jacket. Minnie's hand was small in hers, still freezing, but his grip was strong. Which way? She shouted over the rain. He pointed north. Toward the nicer residential blocks, away from the commercial strip. They walked. Flushing at 3 a.m. in a storm was post-apocalyptic. Empty streets slick with rain. The occasional car hissing past, headlights cutting through the downpour. Neon signs from closed restaurants casting colored shadows in the puddles. Yvette kept her phone in her free hand, ready to dial 911 if needed. So, she said, trying to keep her voice light, you really had piano lessons this late? My teacher is from Seoul, Minnie said, his small voice barely audible over the rain. She keeps Korean hours. Plus, I have school during the day. You're 6 and you go to school and take lessons in the middle of the night? I'm 7 next month, he corrected. And I have many lessons. Piano, taekwondo, Mandarin, Korean history, mathematics. Jesus kid, when do you sleep? Enough. They turned onto a quieter street. Residential. Trees lining the sidewalk. Houses getting bigger. More space between them. This was money territory. You live around here? Yvette asked. Yes. With your mom and dad? My father and grandmother. My mother. He paused. My mother is in Seoul. For work. Must be lonely. He was quiet for a moment. I have tutors. And guards. And my father when he's home. Guards. Yvette's internal alarms started ringing again. They walked another block. The houses were estates now. Gates. High walls. Security cameras. Minnie, she said carefully, what does your father do? Business, he said. Import-export. The oldest line in the book. Import-export, she repeated. Yes. They turned again. This street was darker. Fewer street lights. The houses were set back from the road, hidden behind gates and hedges. Minnie slowed. There, he said, pointing. Yvette looked up and her breath caught. At the end of the block stood a gate. Tall. Wrought iron. And right in the center, glowing faintly under a security light, was an emblem. A gold tiger. Roaring. Intricate and beautiful and terrifying. That's your house. Yvette whispered. Yes. They approached the gate. Yvette could see cameras. Motion sensors. The wall extended in both directions at least 10 feet high, topped with what might have been decorative spikes or actual security measures. This wasn't a house. This was a compound. Minnie reached up to a keypad hidden in the stone pillar. His small fingers pressed buttons, a long code at least 8 digits. The gate hummed. Began to slide open. Minnie, Yvette said, her heart pounding, who exactly is your father? Before he could answer, lights flooded the driveway. Yvette threw up her hand against the glare. Figures emerged from the darkness. Men. At least 4 of them. All in dark suits. All moving fast. Yvette's first instinct was to run, but Minnie's hand tightened in hers. It's okay, he said quietly. The men reached them. They were big. Professional. And they looked at Yvette like she was a threat. One of them, tall, scar across his cheek, barked something in Korean. Sure. Demanding. Minnie responded. His voice changed. Harder. Commanding. He spoke rapid Korean, gesturing to Yvette, his tone leaving no room for argument. The men's faces shifted. Then something like fear. They bowed. All 4 of them. Bent at the waist. In the pouring rain. And then they knelt. On the wet pavement. In their expensive suits. Heads bowed. Yvette's mind went blank. Minnie turned to her. His face was different now. Older. Like a mask had slipped off. Thank you for walking me home, miss? Yvette, she heard herself say. Yvette Anderson. Thank you, Miss Anderson. He let go of her hand. Bowed slightly, respectful but not subservient. You should go now. My father will want to thank you properly, but not tonight. You're safe. No one will follow you. No one will bother you. Minnie, what? Go, he said gently. Please. One of the kneeling men stood, just one, and produced an umbrella. Held it over Yvette's head without looking at her face. She stood there, frozen, rain dripping off her jacket, staring at this little boy who suddenly seemed like anything but. Go, Minnie repeated. Yvette turned. Walk. Her legs moved on autopilot. She made it half a block before she looked back. The gate was closing. The men were gone. The lights were off. Like none of it had happened. Except she was soaked to the bone, her heart was racing, and her phone buzzed with a text from Simone. Girl, where are you? Yvette stood in the rain, shaking. What the hell had she just done? Yvette made it back to the Golden Dragon at 3:24 a.m., dripping rainwater across the tile floor. Simone took one look at her and dropped the tray she was holding. What happened to you? Yvette's voice came out hoarse. I walked a kid home. In a hurricane? It wasn't a hurricane. Girl, you look like you went swimming in the East River. What kid? Where? Yvette stripped off her soaked jacket, her hands shaking from cold or adrenaline or both. Just, this little boy came in. Lost. I walked him home. Simone stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Yvette, you walked a random child home at 3 in the morning in a storm. Do you hear yourself? He was 7, Simone. Soaking wet. What was I supposed to do? Call the cops. Child services. Literally anyone except become personally responsible for a stranger's kid in the middle of the night. Yvette couldn't argue. Everything Simone said was right. Everything she'd done was stupid and dangerous and broke every rule her mother had ever taught her. But those men kneeling in the rain. That golden tiger. Minnie's voice when he spoke Korean, commanding, absolute. She couldn't explain it. I'm fine, she said. He's home. It's over. Simone shook her head. You're lucky you didn't get snatched. Or worse. The rest of the shift blurred. Yvette moved through her closing routine on autopilot, her mind replaying everything. The way Minnie walked. The way he spoke. The way grown men had knelt before a 7-year-old boy. Import-export. Bulls asterisk asterisk asterisk. She got home at 8 a.m., collapsed on her mattress still in her damp clothes, and stared at the water-stained ceiling. Sleep didn't come. Instead, she pulled out her phone and started searching. Gold Tiger Gate Flushing. Nothing. Korean import-export Flushing. Hundreds of results. None matching. Lee Dong-hyun. Too common. Thousands of results. She tried variations. Different spellings. Nothing clicked. It was like the house didn't exist. Like Minnie didn't exist. But he did. She knew he did. Over the next 3 days, Yvette couldn't shake the feeling she was being watched. Walking to the bus stop, was that car following her? At the laundromat, that man in the corner reading a newspaper, was he looking at her? She told herself she was being paranoid. Trauma response. Lack of sleep. But the feeling persisted. Simone noticed. You've been jumpy as hell. You sure that kid thing didn't mess you up? I'm fine. You're not fine. You almost threw hot coffee on Mr. Park yesterday because he came up behind you. I didn't throw it. Barely. On the 4th day, Yvette came home from her shift around noon. She'd switched to days for a few shifts to catch up on sleep, and found something waiting on her apartment doorstep. An envelope. Thick, cream-colored, expensive paper. Her name written in elegant calligraphy, Miss Yvette Anderson. Her hands shook as she picked it up. Inside her apartment, deadbolt locked, lights on, she opened it. The first thing she saw was cash. $100 bills. Stacked neatly. Bound with a paper band. She counted. 100 bills. $10,000. Her vision blurred. Underneath the cash was a note. Handwritten in careful, childlike English. Dear Miss Anderson, thank you for walking me home. You were very kind. My father says I should always repay kindness. Please accept this gift. You are safe. No one will bother you. Your friend Minnie. Yvette's hands shook so hard she dropped the note. $10,000. Sitting on her lap. In her crappy studio apartment. From a 7-year-old boy whose men knelt in the rain. She should return it. Obviously. Immediately. But there was no return address. No way to contact him. The house with the gold tiger might as well have been a dream. And $10,000. That was first, last, and security on a decent place. That was paying off her credit card debt. That was breathing room. That was her cafe dream suddenly not quite so far away. She picked up her phone. Called Simone. You busy? Always. Why? I need you to come over. Now. What happened? Just, please. Simone showed up 20 minutes later with Jamaican beef patties and suspicion all over her face. Yvette handed her the note. Then showed her the cash. Simone's eyes went wide. What? The F asterisk 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 dot. I know. That kid gave you $10,000? His father, I think. For walking him home? I guess. Simone sat down heavily on the floor. There was nowhere else to sit. Vet. Who was this kid? I don't know. You don't know? Girl, you better start figuring out because people don't just hand out 10 grand for being nice. This is. She gestured at the money. This is hush money. Or danger money. Or you better keep your mouth shut money. The note says I'm safe. The note was written by a child. Yvette picked up one of the bills. Held it to the light. Real. Obviously real. What are you gonna do? Simone asked. I don't know. You should go to the cops. And say what? A little boy gave me $10,000 after I walked him home? They'll think I'm crazy. Or lying. Or involved in something. You are involved in something. Yvette pressed her palms to her eyes. Simone was right. Of course she was right. But that money sitting there on her mattress, that was possibility. That was change. That was a way out of the exhausting grind that had defined her entire adult life. I'm gonna keep it, she heard herself say. Yvette. I'm keeping it. I'll put it in my savings. I won't spend it yet. I'll just wait. See if anything else happens. And if something bad happens, then I'll deal with it. Simone looked at her like she'd never seen her before. You're really gonna do this? I think I already did. The moment I walked him home. And that was the truth. Whatever door she'd opened that rainy night, she'd already stepped through it. There was no going back. Nothing happened for 2 weeks. Yvette went to work. Smiled at customers. Counted her tips. The $10,000 sat in her checking account, slowly feeling more real and less like a fevered dream. She almost convinced herself it was over. Then the invitation came. This time it wasn't left at her door. It was hand-delivered. She was walking out of the Golden Dragon after a day's shift when a black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. Slick, spotless, tinted windows. Yvette's first instinct was to run. But the back door opened and a woman stepped out. Korean, 50s, immaculately dressed in a charcoal suit. Hair pulled into a tight bun. She looked like a CEO or a diplomat. "Miss Anderson," she said. Perfect English, slight accent. "My name is Mrs. Choi. I work for Mr. Lee. He would like to invite you to dinner." "I don't know any Mr. Lee. You walked his son home 2 weeks ago." Yvette's heart jumped into her throat. Mrs. Choi's expression didn't change. Professional. Neutral. "Mr. Lee would like to thank you personally and discuss a matter of mutual interest. Tonight if you're available. If not, we can arrange another time." "And if I say no?" "Then we say good night and you never hear from us again." Mrs. Choi paused. "But Mr. Lee believes you have questions. He's willing to answer them." Yvette looked at the Mercedes. At Mrs. Choi. At the street around them, people walking, cars passing, normal life continuing while this surreal moment unfolded. "If I get in that car, will I come back out?" Mrs. Choi almost smiled. "Yes. You will be driven to a restaurant, you will have dinner, and you will be driven home. You have my word." "Your word doesn't mean much to me." "Then you have Dong Hyun's word. He was very clear that you must never be harmed." "Minnie." Yvette took a breath. Texted Simone, "Getting in a car with strangers. If you don't hear from me in 3 hours, call the cops. I'll send you the license plate." She photographed the Mercedes's plate. "Send it." Simone's response came immediately. "Girl, what?" Yvette pocketed her phone. "Let's go." The restaurant was in Manhattan. Midtown. A place with no sign, just a discreet wooden door between a dry cleaner and a bank. Mrs. Choi led her inside. Private dining rooms. Soft lighting. The smell of expensive Korean cuisine. Nothing like the Golden Dragon. This was refined. Artful. Every detail perfect. They entered a room at the back. Tatama mats. Low table. Screens depicting cherry blossoms. And at the head of the table sat a man. Tall, Yvette could tell even seated. Mid-40s. Black hair graying at the temples. Sharp features. He wore a simple black suit, white shirt, no tie. Everything about him screamed power contained in stillness. He stood when she entered. Bowed slightly. "Miss Anderson. Thank you for coming. Please sit." His English was flawless. Accent barely detectable. Yvette sat. Her palms were sweating. Lee Kangmin, she assumed that's who this was, sat across from her. Mrs. Choi stood by the door like a sentinel. "Would you like tea? Something stronger?" he asked. "Water's fine." He poured from a crystal carafe. Handed her the glass. Their fingers didn't touch. "I owe you a debt," he said simply. "You protected my son when you had no obligation to do so. You asked nothing in return. In my world, such actions are rare. I just walked him home. At 3 in the morning. In a storm. When every instinct likely told you not to." Yvette sipped her water. "He was a kid. What was I supposed to do? Most people would have called the police. Or refused. You did neither. The money was inadequate," he interrupted. "But it was what Dong Hyun insisted on. He wanted to thank you himself. He's 7. He is. And he's also the only heir to everything I've built." Silence stretched between them. Kangmin leaned back. "You've been trying to find information about us. About me. You won't. I've made certain of that." Yvette's throat went dry. "You've been watching me. Ensuring your safety. There's a difference." "Is there?" He almost smiled. "Fair question." He poured himself tea. "Let me be direct, Miss Anderson. I am the head of a syndicate that operates across New York, Los Angeles, Seoul, Tokyo, and several other cities. We deal in import-export, as I'm sure Dong Hyun mentioned, but that's shorthand for a variety of business interests. Some legal, some less so. We handle logistics, acquisitions, negotiations. We solve problems that conventional businesses cannot. You're a gangster. I prefer businessman with unconventional methods. But yes, if it makes you more comfortable, I run a criminal organization." Yvette's hands clenched in her lap. "And you're telling me this why?" Because you deserve the truth. You walked into my world accidentally. You deserve to know what that means. It means I should walk right back out. You could. I wouldn't stop you. The money is yours to keep regardless. You'd never hear from us again. But Kangmin's eyes were steady, dark, reading her. But my son likes you. He's asked about you. He wonders if you're well. And he has very few people in his life who see him as just a boy. He's not just a boy. No. But he should be. For a few more years at least. Kangmin set down his tea. I'm offering you a position. Not employment. Not servitude. Think of it as occasional friendship. Supervised, structured time with Donghyun. Outings. Conversations. Normalcy. In exchange for what? Silence. Discretion. And protection. Protection from what? From anyone who might seek to use your connection to my family against us. Or against you. Yvette's pulse hammered. Are you threatening me? I'm protecting you. There are people, rivals, investigators, opportunists, who would hurt you simply because my son walked through your door. I'm offering to ensure that doesn't happen. By keeping me close. By keeping you safe. Yvette stood. Her chair scraped against the floor. This is insane. It is. I'm a waitress from Queens. I don't belong in your world. You don't. Which is precisely why my son finds you trustworthy. He's 7. And he's been trained since birth to recognize threats and allies. He sees you as the latter. Yvette paced. The room suddenly felt too small. Too hot. What if I say no? Then you walk out of here, live your life, and we part as strangers who once helped each other. You'll really let me go? Kangmin stood. He was a head taller than her. But his voice was gentle. Miss Anderson, I have many tools at my disposal to make people comply. Fear. Money. Violence. I don't need to use them with you. Either you choose this freely or you don't choose it at all. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him. But standing there in this perfect room, with this dangerous man offering her a devil's bargain wrapped in kindness, she knew the truth. She'd already chosen. The moment she took Minnie's hand. How much money are we talking about? She asked quietly. 50,000 a year. Deposited monthly. For perhaps 6 hours of your time per month. More if you choose. $50,000. Her entire salary at the Golden Dragon. For being a kid's friend. And I'd be safe? I give you my word. Your word doesn't mean much to me, she repeated. This time Kangmin did smile. Then believe this. Donghyun's safety depends on very few people trusting him. You're one of them. Protecting you protects him. I always protect what's mine. I'm not yours. No, but you're his. Which means I'll guard you like a treasure. Yvette looked at Mrs. Choi, still standing silent by the door. Looked at Kangmin, patient and terrifying and somehow genuine. Thought about her studio apartment. Her shrinking dreams. Her mother's stone face. I want the agreement in writing, she said. Kangmin nodded. Of course. And I want Simone, my friend, to know where I am when I'm with you people. Every time. Acceptable. And the moment I feel unsafe, I'm out. Agreed. She exhaled. Sat back down. Okay. I'm in. Kangmin bowed his head. Thank you, Miss Anderson. Yvette. If we're doing this, call me Yvette. Yvette. He tested the name. Donghyun will be pleased. Food arrived then, course after course, each more exquisite than the last. They ate. They talked. Kangmin told her about Donghyun's education, his personality, his fears. And slowly, impossibly, Yvette began to see the outline of her new life taking shape. A life that had started with one simple question. Can you walk me home? The first official outing happened 3 weeks later. Mrs. Choi picked Yvette up on a Sunday afternoon, her day off. They drove to a park in Bayside. Quiet. Trees. Families playing. Minnie was waiting on a bench, flanked by 2 men in casual clothes who were obviously bodyguards. He wore a normal kid's outfit. Jeans, sneakers, a Yankees cap, but he sat perfectly still, hands folded like he was posing for a portrait. Until he saw Yvette. His face lit up. Actual joy. He jumped off the bench and ran to her. Miss Anderson. She crouched down. Hey Minnie, you remember me? Of course. He looked offended. Father said you agreed to spend time with me. I did. If that's okay with you. It's very okay. They walked through the park. The bodyguards followed at a distance, visible but not intrusive. Mrs. Choi stayed by the car. Minnie asked her questions. What did she like to do? What was her favorite food? Did she have siblings? She asked him back. What did he want to be when he grew up? What was his favorite subject? Mathematics, he said. And history. Not piano? He made a face. Piano is obligation. Math is interesting. You sound like a tiny professor. My tutor says the same thing. They got ice cream from a vendor. Minnie insisted on paying, pulled out $100 bill from his pocket like it was nothing. Yvette stopped him. Minnie, you can't just carry around hundreds. Why not? Because you're 7. What if someone tries to rob you? He looked genuinely confused, then gestured subtly toward the bodyguards. They wouldn't succeed. That's not the point. Then what is? The point is, she struggled to explain. Normal kids don't have that kind of money. They use their allowance. Like $5. Oh. He considered this. Then pulled out a crumpled $5 bill from another pocket. Is this better? She laughed. Couldn't help it. Yes, Minnie. That's better. They sat on a bench eating their ice cream, strawberry for her, vanilla for him, and watched kids play soccer. Do you ever play with other kids? Yvette asked. Not really. I have lessons mostly. No friends your age? I have tutors. And guards. And you now. Her heart broke a little. Over the next 6 months they settled into a routine. Twice a month, sometimes 3 times, Yvette would meet Minnie. Sometimes at parks. Sometimes museums. He loved the Natural History Museum. Once they went to a Yankees game. Minnie sat in a luxury box but spent most of the time asking Yvette to explain the rules because he found baseball illogical. She taught him slang. That's fire, and no cap, and bet. He'd repeat them carefully, testing them out, sounding absurd and adorable. He taught her Korean phrases. How to say thank you properly. How to count to 10. She met his tutor, the piano teacher, a severe woman named Miss Park who clearly didn't approve of Yvette's presence but tolerated it because Kangmin said so. She met his grandmother once. A tiny, ancient woman who looked at Yvette with suspicion and spoke only Korean. But she served tea, which Yvette figured was some form of acceptance. She never met Minnie's mother. The subject was carefully avoided. The money arrived like clockwork. $4,167 on the first of every month. Yvette put most of it in savings. Started paying down debt. Bought herself a real bed frame. Splurged on a winter coat that actually kept her warm. Simone watched all of this with increasing concern. You know this can't last, right? She said one night over cheap wine in Yvette's now slightly less crappy apartment. Why not? Because they're criminals, Vet. Because at some point they're gonna ask you to do something you can't walk away from. They haven't yet. But Yvette couldn't explain how it felt to see Minnie light up when she arrived. Couldn't explain how being needed, truly needed, not just for labor but for connection, filled something in her she hadn't known was empty. Couldn't explain that Kangmin had been nothing but respectful, professional. Their interactions were brief. He'd appear sometimes at the end of an outing, thank her, ask if she needed anything. Once he asked about her cafe dream. She'd mentioned it to Minnie in passing. Apparently Minnie had mentioned it to his father. When you're ready, Kangmin said, I know people who could help. Lease negotiations. Permits. Introductions. I'm not taking your money for that. Not my money. My connections. There's a difference. She declined. Politely. But the offer sat in the back of her mind. The only weird thing, well, weirder than everything else, was the security. She'd notice people sometimes. In the cafe she studied at. On her bus route. Men and women who didn't quite fit. Who seemed too aware of her. Once she mentioned it to Mrs. Choi. You're protected, Mrs. Choi had said simply. Mr. Lee's orders. I'm being followed. You're being guarded. There's a difference. Yvette had stopped arguing about it. Because the truth was she did feel safer. Walking home late at night. Taking the subway. Even just existing in the city. Knowing someone was watching, it should have felt creepy. Instead it felt like armor. And then 8 months in things shifted. Minnie asked her during an outing to a bookstore, do you think my father is a bad man? Yvette froze. They were in the children's section. Minnie was holding a copy of Where the Wild Things Are. Why are you asking me that? My tutor says bad men go to jail. My father has never gone to jail. But people are afraid of him. So is he bad? Jesus. Yvette knelt down, looked him in the eyes. I think your father is complicated. I think he does things I don't agree with, but I also think he loves you very much. And that counts for something. Does it count enough? I don't know, Minnie. That's something you'll have to figure out when you're older. He nodded slowly, hugged the book to his chest. Do you think I'll be bad too? Her throat closed. No, baby. I think you'll be whatever you choose to be. Even if I'm supposed to be my father? Even then. He bought the book. Read it 3 times that afternoon. Yvette went home that night and cried. Because she saw the trap now. Saw how deep she'd already fallen in. This wasn't just friendship. This was attachment. Investment. This was love. And love, she'd learned young, always came with a price. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a phone call. Yvette was at the Golden Dragon. She still worked there, still needed the normalcy, the routine, when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Hello. Silence. Then breathing. Heavy. Deliberate. Hello, she repeated. A voice. Mel. Accented. You should be more careful who you make friends with. Click. Her hands went cold. She told Mrs. Choi the next day. Mrs. Choi's face didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. What exactly did they say? Yvette repeated it. Anything else? Threats? Demands? No. Just that. Mrs. Choi nodded. We'll handle it. In the meantime, vary your routes home. Don't go anywhere alone if possible. And call me immediately if anything else happens. What's going on? Politics. That's not an answer. Mrs. Choi sighed. There are other organizations in the city. Some have concerns about Mr. Lee's operations. You've been seen with Dong Hyun. That makes you a person of interest. Interest how? As a potential pressure point. Yvette's stomach dropped. They'd hurt me to get to Minnie? They'd hurt you to send a message. But they won't. We're watching. Easy for her to say. The second sign came a week later. Yvette arrived home to find her apartment door ajar. She froze in the hallway. Pulled out her phone. Dialed the number Mrs. Choi had given her for emergencies. Don't go inside, Mrs. Choi said immediately. I'm sending someone. 20 minutes later, 2 men arrived. Not cops. Lee's people. They went inside while Yvette waited in the hallway, heart hammering. They emerged 10 minutes later. Clear, one said. But someone was here. They went through your things. Didn't take anything. Just looked. The violation of it made her sick. Inside, everything was subtly wrong. Drawers not quite closed. Papers slightly moved. Her laptop, still there, but the angle was different. They'd been searching. For what? They're testing boundaries, Mrs. Choi explained when she arrived. Seeing what you know. What you have. How you'll react. Who are they? A Chinese syndicate operating out of Chinatown. They've been expanding. Stepping on our territory. Mr. Lee has been discouraging this. And I'm caught in the crossfire. You're protected. But yes. This is insane. It is. I should leave. And this. Go back to my normal life. Mrs. Choi looked at her with something almost like sympathy. You can. Mr. Lee would honor that. But understand, now that they know about you, leaving won't make you invisible. It'll just make you unprotected. The trap had teeth. Yvette called Simone, told her everything. Simone freaked out. Pack a bag. Stay with me. We'll figure this out. Yvette stayed with Simone for a week. But Lee's people found her there too, not threateningly, just checking in, offering protection. The rival calls continued. Sometimes voice. Sometimes text. Always vague. Always threatening. You're in over your head. Walk away while you can. He can't protect you forever. Mrs. Choi offered a safe house. A condo in Fort Lee, New Jersey. 24-hour security. Until this settles. For how long? Weeks. Maybe months. I can't just disappear from my life. Then we increase your security detail. But staying visible makes you vulnerable. Yvette refused the safe house. Refused to hide. Moved back to her apartment with new locks, a security system, and the constant awareness that she was being watched by multiple factions. She kept seeing Minnie. Because how could she explain to a 7-year-old that she was abandoning him because his father's enemies were threatening her? Minnie noticed her tension. Are you okay, Nuna? he asked. He'd started calling her that, Korean for older sister. I'm fine, Minnie. You're lying. Smart kid. I'm just stressed. Adult stuff. Is someone bothering you? Nothing I can't handle. He looked at her with those ancient eyes. If someone hurts you, tell me. I'll tell father. Minnie, you're 8 years old. I know what I am. I also know what my father is. And what that makes me. The weight in his voice broke her. She pulled him into a hug. Nobody's gonna hurt me, baby. I promise. But she didn't know if she was lying. One night in February, nearly a year after that first rainy walk, Yvette was closing up at the Golden Dragon when a black SUV pulled up outside. Not one of Lee's. Different make. Different plates. 3 men got out. Yvette's blood froze. They walked toward the restaurant. One of them smiled. She grabbed her phone, dialed Mrs. Choi, and ran for the back exit. Behind her, she heard the bell ring. Heard footsteps. She burst into the alley, rain starting to fall, always rain, and ran. Footsteps behind her. Faster. She heard a shout. Korean. Angry. Then different voices. Commands. Scuffling. She risked a look back. Lee's people. 4 of them. Moving fast. Intercepting the men from the SUV. She kept running until she hit Roosevelt Avenue. Ducked into a 24-hour bodega. Locked herself in the bathroom. Mrs. Choi called. Where are you? Yvette gave the address through chattering teeth. Stay there. Someone's coming. 20 minutes later, Mrs. Choi herself arrived. Took Yvette to a car. Drove her to a hotel in Manhattan. Corporate. Anonymous. You're staying here tonight, Mrs. Choi said. Tomorrow we'll discuss next steps. They tried to grab me. They did. What would they have done? Mrs. Choi's silence was answer enough. Yvette sat on the hotel bed, shaking, understanding finally, really understanding what she'd walked into. This wasn't a game. This wasn't a movie. People wanted to hurt her. Because she'd held a little boy's hand in the rain. Is everyone okay? 3 injured. None fatally. The shooters are contained. Who were they? The Chinese syndicate. Making a statement. By attacking a charity event? By targeting my son. Minnie was asleep now, exhausted, still clinging to Yvette. Kangmin sat across from them. You didn't hesitate. He's a kid. He's my heir. A symbol. A target. Most people would have saved themselves. I'm not most people. No, you're not. He leaned forward. I need to ask you something. And I need complete honesty. Okay. Are you willing to be part of his life permanently? Not just as a friend. As family. Someone he can count on when I'm gone. Someone who will help him navigate the world I'm leaving him. The weight of the question settled on her shoulders. Kangmin, I'm 26. I'm not qualified to. You're loyal. You're smart. You see him as a person, not a pawn. That's rarer than any qualification. What are you really asking? I'm asking if you'll be his godmother. Formally. In our world, that means protection. Guidance. A voice in his future. Yvette looked down at the sleeping child in her arms. Thought about the rainy night that started this. About every choice that led her here. Yes, she whispered. I'll do it. Kangmin bowed his head. Thank you. And just like that, Yvette Anderson became part of a crime family. Not through blood. Through choice. Kangmin himself came to the hotel the next morning. Yvette had barely slept. She sat in the chair by the window watching the city wake up when he knocked. She opened the door. He looked tired. More than she'd ever seen. May I come in? She stepped aside. He sat on the edge of the bed, respectful of space, while she stayed by the window. I'm sorry, he said. This shouldn't have happened. My people should have anticipated. Your people saved me. After putting you in danger in the first place. Silence hung between them. I want to release you from our agreement, Kangmin said quietly. Effective immediately. The money stops. The protection continues for another year while we make sure they lose interest. But you're free. Yvette stared at him. Just like that. You didn't sign up for this. I thought we could manage the risk. I was wrong. What about Minnie? Pain flickered across Kangmin's face. I'll explain. He'll understand eventually. Will he? He's stronger than you think. He's 8. He's my son. Strength comes early. Yvette turned back to the window. Watched cars crawl through morning traffic. What if I don't want to leave? Kangmin went still. Yvette. What if I want to stay? They tried to kidnap you last night. And your people stopped them. This time. There will be other times. She faced him. Then teach me how to protect myself. Better security. Training. Whatever it takes. Why? Because I made a promise to Minnie. Because he's a good kid in a bad situation and he needs someone who sees him as just a kid. Because I'm tired of running from everything in my life. Kangmin stood. You don't know what you're asking. Then tell me. I'm asking you to accept that your life will never be normal again. That you'll always look over your shoulder. That the people who care about you will be in danger just for knowing you. That you might die because of your connection to my family. I might die crossing the street in Queens. At least this way I'm dying for something that matters. He studied her face. You really mean that? I really do. He exhaled slowly. Then we do this properly. Real protection. Real training. You learn how to spot threats, evade surveillance, handle yourself in a crisis. You get secure housing. Not a safe house you hide in, but a real apartment with real security. And you meet the inner circle. No more shadows. If you're in, you're in. What do you get out of this? My son's happiness. And he hesitated. Someone I can trust. Trust is rarer than gold in my world. Yvette held out her hand. Then let's do this. He shook it. His grip was firm. Welcome to the family, Yvette. The next 3 months were a blur. Yvette moved to a new apartment in Forest Hills. Nicer building. Doorman. Security cameras everywhere. It cost more than she could afford on her own, but Kangmin covered the difference as part of her compensation package. She quit the Golden Dragon. Simone was devastated. I can't tell you everything, Yvette said over their last coffee together, but I need you to trust me. I'm okay. I'm safe. And I'm doing something important. This is about that kid. It's about a lot of things. You're scaring me, Yvette. I'm scared too. But I'm also sure. They hugged goodbye. Yvette promised to stay in touch. Wondered if she'd be able to keep that promise. She started training. Self-defense with a former Mossad agent. Situational awareness with an ex-NYPD detective. Even basic firearms training, though she hated guns. She met the inner circle. Lieutenants. Advisors. The people who actually ran Kangmin's empire. Some were Korean. Some Chinese. One was Russian. All were terrifying in different ways. They watched her with suspicion. The outsider. The black woman who'd stumbled into their world and somehow become important. She held her ground. Learned their names. Their roles. Showed respect but not submission. Slowly, grudgingly, they accepted her. She saw Minnie more often now. He was delighted that she'd moved closer. Asked about her new apartment. Wanted to help decorate. She took him to IKEA. Watching an 8-year-old Mafia heir pick out throw pillows was surreal. Nuna, do you like this one? He held up a cushion with cartoon cats. It's perfect, Minnie. He beamed. And then came the gala. June 2016. A charity event at a Manhattan hotel. Technically legitimate, raising money for Korean cultural programs. Actually a gathering of the city's Korean power players, many with ties to organizations like Kangmin's. Yvette was invited as Minnie's guest. Her first public appearance in that world. She wore a dress Mrs. Choi helped her pick. Elegant, expensive, making her feel like an imposter. Minnie wore a tiny suit. Looked like a miniature businessman. You look beautiful, Nuna, he said seriously. You look handsome, Minnie. The ballroom was opulent. Crystal chandeliers. String quartet. People in designer everything. Yvette felt every eye on her as they entered. The whispers. The stares. Kangmin appeared at her elbow. Breathe. You belong here. Do I? You're with my son. That makes you untouchable. The evening was going smoothly, awkward small talk, rich food, Minnie introducing her to people like she was important. When it happened. A commotion near the entrance. Raised voices. Then gunshots. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Kangmin's hand was on Yvette's arm instantly. Get Donghyun. Back exit. Now. But Minnie was across the room, frozen, as panicked guests surged around him. Yvette didn't think. She ran. Pushing through the crowd, ignoring the screams, focused only on the small boy in the navy suit. She reached him. Grabbed his hand. We're leaving. Now. More shots. Closer. She pulled Minnie toward the kitchen, remembered the layout from earlier, thank God for her training, and shoved through the doors. Chefs ducking. Pots crashing. Out the back. Into an alley. These people were there. 4 of them. Forming a protective wall. Get in the car, one shouted. She pushed Minnie into the waiting SUV, climbed in after him. The SUV peeled out. Behind them, more gunfire. Minnie was shaking. Silent tears running down his face. Yvette pulled him close. It's okay. You're safe. I got you. Nuna, I was scared. I know, baby. Me too. But you came. Of course I came. He buried his face in her shoulder. The SUV drove them to a secure location, some kind of safe house in Westchester. Kangmin arrived an hour later, face tight with fury. He looked at Yvette holding his son. Something in his expression softened. Thank you, he said quietly. 1 year later. Summer 2017. Yvette sat in a cafe in Prospect Heights. Her cafe opened 6 months ago with a legitimate small business loan and a very strategic list of investors Kangmin had suggested. The place was everything she dreamed. Exposed brick. Good coffee. Local art on the walls. A space that felt alive. She'd named it Minnie's Place. A private joke that made the kid grin every time he visited. He was there now, 9 years old, sitting at a corner table doing homework while his bodyguard sat nearby pretending to read a newspaper. Yvette brought him hot chocolate. Extra marshmallows. How's the math? Easy, he said without looking up. This is elementary. You're literally in elementary school. You know what I mean. She ruffled his hair. He swatted her hand away but smiled. Her life had become a strange balance. Daytime. Running the cafe, serving customers, managing inventory, living something close to normal. Nighttime. Attending meetings in back rooms, learning the politics of Kangmin's world, navigating alliances and rivalries. She'd become a fixture. The outsider who'd somehow become an insider. People still whispered. Still questioned. But they respected her. Or at least respected what she meant to Minnie and Kangmin. The money was good. Better than good. She'd paid off her mother's debts. Set up a trust for Patricia's retirement. Even helped Simone, still her best friend, though the friendship was strained by secrets, get into a nursing program. But the cost. Yvette couldn't date. Every guy she met either got scared off by the background checks these people ran or got too interested in her connections. She'd lost friends. People from her old life who couldn't understand the new one. Who looked at her apartment, her cafe, her expensive clothes and saw someone who'd sold out without understanding what she'd bought into. Her mother knew something was wrong. Baby, Patricia had said last Sunday over dinner, you gonna tell me where all this money really came from? I told you. The cafe investments. Don't lie to me. I raised you better. Yvette had looked at her mother's worn hands, her tired eyes, and lied anyway. It's legit, Mama. I promise. Because how could she explain? How could she tell Patricia that her daughter was now godmother to a mafia heir? That she attended meetings where people discussed territory disputes and money laundering? That she'd watched Kangmin order someone's punishment with the same calm he used to order tea? She couldn't. So she lied and hated herself for it. Minnie was changing too. Getting older. Harder. He'd started training, real training. Martial arts. Strategy. Languages. Being groomed for succession. Sometimes she'd see flashes of Kangmin in him. The cold calculation. The ruthless efficiency. It scared her. Minnie, she'd asked him once, do you ever wish you could just be a normal kid? He'd thought about it. Sometimes. But then I remember who I am. What I'm meant to do. And normal seems boring. Normal isn't boring. Normal is safe. Safe is boring too. At 9. God help them all. The rival pressures hadn't stopped. If anything, they'd intensified. The Chinese syndicate had been weakened after the Gala attack, but new players emerged. A Russian crew moving into Brighton Beach. A Colombian cartel extending up the eastern seaboard. Even internal challenges, younger members of Kangmin's organization questioning his leadership, his methods, his choice to bring an outsider into the fold. Yvette had survived 2 more attempts. One a poisoning, caught by the food tester Kangmin had insisted she have. One a car bomb, discovered by the mechanic who checked her vehicle daily. She'd stopped being scared. Started being angry. How long does this go on? she demanded of Kangmin after the car bomb. Until they understand you're permanent. That attacking you brings consequences worse than any benefit. And how do you make them understand that? His expression had been cold. Let me worry about that. She'd learned not to ask about the details. About what happened to people who threatened her. About the bodies that occasionally turned up in rivers or dumpsters. Plausible deniability. That's what Mrs. Choi called it. Yvette called it cowardice. But she stayed. Because leaving would mean abandoning Minnie. And she'd promised. Her relationship with Kangmin had evolved into something she couldn't quite name. Not romantic. God no. He was her employer, her protector, Minnie's father. The lines were clear. But there was something. Respect. Trust. Understanding. He'd started consulting her on decisions. Not the criminal ones, she'd made clear she didn't want that blood on her hands. But personal ones. Minnie's education. Family matters. How to navigate the public-facing elements of his empire. You see things differently, he'd explained. Outside perspective. It's valuable. I'm not qualified to advise a crime boss. You're qualified to advise a father. That's what I need. She'd helped him navigate Minnie's anxiety about public speaking. Suggested therapy, actual therapy, which apparently was revolutionary in their world. Pushed back when he wanted to accelerate Minnie's training. He's 9, Kangmin. Let him be 9. He's my heir. 9 is already late. Then let him be a late bloomer. He'll be running your empire for 40-50 years. Let him have a childhood for 5 more. Kangmin had actually listened. Scaled back the intensity. Given Minnie more room to breathe. It was the first time Yvette realized she had real power in this world. Not fear-based power. Not money power. But influence. The kind that came from being trusted. She wielded it carefully. But wielding it at all meant she was complicit. And that knowledge sat heavy on her conscience. Late one night, alone in her apartment, she called the one person she thought might understand. Her father. She tracked him down a year ago. He was out of prison, living in Baltimore, working construction, trying to rebuild. Baby girl, Marcus had said when she called, voice rough with emotion and surprise. They talked for an hour. About his regrets. Her life. The choices that had brought them both to this point. Daddy, she'd finally asked, if you could go back, would you do things differently? Even if it meant losing everything you gained? Silence. Then, I'd do right. Even if it cost me. Because what I gained wasn't worth what I lost. She cried after that call. Because she wasn't sure she could say the same. Summer turned to fall. Fall to winter. Minnie's 10th birthday came. They celebrated at an upscale restaurant, family only, which apparently now included Yvette. She watched him blow out candles, make a wish, smile at his grandmother and father and the small circle of people who genuinely cared about him. And she thought, this is worth it. Even if it's wrong. Even if it costs me. This boy having people who love him, is worth it. She just hoped she wouldn't regret that conviction. Because in this world, regret came with consequences far worse than guilt. April 2021. 5 years after that rainy night. Minnie was 12 now. On the edge of adolescence. Taller, sharper, carrying himself with a confidence that was both impressive and terrifying. The world had changed. Pandemic. Economic chaos. Shifts in power dynamics across every industry, legitimate and otherwise. Kangmin's empire had weathered it. Adapted. Even grown. But growth meant competition. And competition meant war. The Korean syndicate out of Los Angeles, technically allied with Kangmin but increasingly independent, had started making moves into New York territory. Not aggressively. Not obviously. But steadily. Kangmin had tried negotiation. Mediation through mutual contacts. Warnings. Nothing worked. They think I'm weak, he told Yvette during one of their increasingly frequent strategy sessions. They think the pandemic made us vulnerable. They're testing boundaries. Are you weak? No. But I'm tired. She'd never heard him admit that before. Kangmin was 47 now. Still formidable. But the weight of decades in this life showed. In the lines around his eyes. The gray in his hair. The way he sometimes stared into his tea like it held answers. What do you want to do? Yvette asked. What I have to do. Send a message. Remind them why alliances matter. Meaning? Meaning blood. She'd felt sick. There has to be another way. If there is, I haven't found it. The situation escalated quickly after that. Shipments intercepted. Safe houses raided. One of Kangmin's lieutenants killed in broad daylight in Koreatown. The city's underworld held its breath. Everyone knew what was coming. Yvette tried to shield Minnie from it. But he was 12, not 7. He understood. Nuna, he'd said during one of their visits to the cafe, which had become a neutral meeting ground protected by mutual agreement, is father going to kill them? Minnie, don't lie, please. Is he? She'd looked at this boy she'd protected, guided, loved for 5 years. Seen the man he was becoming. The leader he'd have to be. I don't know. But I think he's trying to avoid it. What if avoiding it makes him look weak? What if it puts us in more danger? Then we find another way. What way? She'd thought about it, turned it over in her mind for days. And then she'd had an idea. Crazy. Dangerous. Probably stupid. But maybe, just maybe, possible. She'd gone to Kangmin with it. Let me talk to them. He'd stared at her like she'd suggested flying to the moon. Absolutely not. Hear me out. I'm not part of your organization. Not officially. I'm an outsider who's earned respect. I can approach them as a neutral party. Ask for a meeting. Not to negotiate territory, that's your job. But to negotiate understanding. They'll see it as weakness. Or they'll see it as someone trying to prevent unnecessary bloodshed. Which, let's be honest, is expensive and attracts attention you don't need. Yvette, they could kill you. They could. But they won't. Because killing me would mean war with you, and they're not ready for that. They're testing. Pushing. But they don't actually want full conflict. Not yet. Kangmin had leaned back. Studied her. You've been paying attention. I've had good teachers. This is incredibly dangerous. So is every other option. He'd been quiet for a long time. Finally, if I allow this, you go with my people. Full security. At the first sign of trouble, you leave. And if they refuse to meet, this ends. We do it my way. Deal. The meeting was arranged through back channels. Neutral territory, a private room at a restaurant in Flushing. Ironic given where this all started. Yvette went with Mrs. Choi and 4 bodyguards. Wore her best suit. Carried nothing but her words. The LA delegation was led by a man named Park Jin-woo. Early 50s. Sharp suit. Sharper eyes. They sat across a table. Tea poured. Pleasantries exchanged. Then Park spoke. Why are you here, Miss Anderson? You're not Lee's negotiator. No. I'm his son's godmother. And I have a vested interest in that child growing up in a world that's not constantly at war. Noble. But naive. Maybe. But hear me out. She leaned forward. You're pushing into New York because you think Kangmin's vulnerable. You're wrong. What you're seeing as weakness is actually patience. He's giving you room to save face before he responds. Is that a threat? It's a fact. You know his reputation. You know what he's capable of. But you also know he prefers stability to chaos. That's good business. So you're here to tell us to back off? I'm here to offer a different perspective. You want New York access? Fine. But take it through partnership, not invasion. Joint ventures. Shared territories. Mutual profit. You get what you want. Kangmin keeps his dignity. Nobody dies. Park smiled. Cold. And why would we partner when we could just take? Because taking means war. War means loss. Money, people, attention from law enforcement. You're smart businessmen. War is bad business. But partnership? That's growth. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Back and forth. Posturing. Testing. But by the end, they'd agreed to another meeting. With Kangmin present. To discuss terms. It wasn't peace. But it was possibility. Yvette left exhausted. Drained. Terrified she'd made things worse. But Kangmin met her outside. Read the outcome on her face. They agreed. To talk. That's all. He pulled her into an unexpected embrace. Brief. Tight. Thank you. The negotiations took months. Yvette sat in on some. Watched Kangmin work. Watched compromises form. Territory divided. Joint operations established. Old grudges set aside in favor of profit. It wasn't perfect. There were still tensions. Still occasional flare-ups. But it wasn't war. And that was everything. Summer 2022. Minnie was 13. Officially entering high school, A private academy, heavily protected, where children of the powerful learn to be powerful themselves. Yvette watched him walk through those gates on his first day, backpack slung over one shoulder, looking so much older than the tiny boy who'd walked into her restaurant 7 years ago. She'd cried in the car. Mrs. Choi had pretended not to notice. Her cafe had expanded. A second location in Manhattan. A third planned for Brooklyn. She'd hired people from her old neighborhood. Gave them fair wages. Good conditions. A chance. It was her way of balancing the scales. Of taking the blood money and turning it into something clean. Her mother knew now. Not everything. But enough. You're involved with dangerous people, Patricia had said. Not a question. Yes. Are you safe? As safe as I can be. Do you love that boy? That kid you're always talking about? Like he's mine. Patricia had nodded. Then I guess you do what you gotta do. But Yvette, don't lose yourself in their world. You hear me? Don't forget who you are. I won't, Mama. She'd meant it. But she also knew she'd changed. Irrevocably. The girl who'd wiped tables at 3 a.m. was gone. In her place was a woman who negotiated with gangsters. Who lived in luxury purchased with dirty money. Who loved a child she'd die to protect, knowing he'd grow up to run an empire built on violence. It was complicated. Messy. Morally gray in ways she'd never expected. But it was hers. December 2024. Minnie's 16th birthday. The party was huge. Lavish. Held at an estate in Westchester. Legitimate property, at least on paper. Family. Associates. Politicians who didn't ask questions. Business leaders who knew exactly what they were celebrating. Yvette wore a designer gown. Moved through the crowd with confidence earned over years of navigating this world. She found Minnie on the terrace. Alone. Looking out over the grounds. Hey, birthday boy. Why aren't you inside enjoying your party? He smiled. Taller than her now. Almost a man. Too many people pretending to care. Cynical at 16? Realistic. She stood beside him. You remember the night we met? Every detail. You were so small. So scared. Trying so hard to be brave. I wasn't scared. I was calculating. Trying to figure out if you were trustworthy. At 6. 7 almost. And yes. Father taught me young, trust no one until they prove themselves. Did I prove myself? He looked at her. You're still here. That's proof enough. They stood in comfortable silence. Minnie, she said quietly, in a few years you're going to start really leading. Taking on responsibility. Your father's preparing for that. I know. When that happens, promise me something. What? Don't become him. Not completely. Keep the part of you that's still just a kid who liked ice cream and cartoon cats on throw pillows. Keep your humanity. In this world. Especially in this world. He was quiet. Then, you're asking me to be weak. I'm asking you to be balanced. Strong when you need to be. Kind when you can be. There's a difference. And if kindness gets me killed, then I'll have failed to teach you properly. Because kindness isn't weakness, Minnie. It's strategy. People who care about you, really care, will die for you. People who only fear you will betray you first chance they get. You turn that over. Is that why Father keeps you around? Strategy? Maybe at first. But I think now it's because he needs someone who sees him as a person, not just a leader. Same as you. Do you see me as just a person? Always. Even when you're being a crime boss in training. He laughed. Actually laughed. I love you, Nuna. Her heart clenched. I love you too, Minnie. Will you still be here? When I'm running everything. When Father's gone. If you want me. If you'll have me. Yes. I'll always want you here. They hugged. And Yvette thought about how far they'd come. From that rainy night to this moment. From strangers to family. From a waitress and a lost boy to something neither could have imagined. March 2026. Present day. Yvette stood in her cafe, the original location in Prospect Heights, watching the morning rush. People laughing. Working. Living normal lives. She was 36 now. Still young but feeling older. The years in this life had aged her in ways that didn't show on her face. Minnie was 17. A senior in high school. Already taking on leadership roles in his father's organization. Already making decisions that would shape empires. Kangmin was talking about retirement. Not soon. But eventual. handing over control, ensuring succession. Yvette would be part of that transition. Advisor. Mediator. The voice of reason when the old guard pushed too hard and the young blood pushed back. It wasn't what she'd planned for her life, but it was her life. She thought about alternate timelines sometimes. What if she'd called the cops that night? What if she'd refused to walk Minnie home? What if she'd taken the money and run? She'd be, what? Still serving tables somewhere? Working toward that cafe dream alone? Safe but small? Maybe. But she wouldn't have Minnie. Wouldn't have the strange, complicated family she'd built. Wouldn't have learned that she was capable of navigating worlds she'd never imagined entering. Wouldn't have learned she was brave. Her phone buzzed. Text from Minnie, lunch today? New ramen place in Flushing? She smiled. Texted back, pick me up at noon. And you're buying. Always am, Nuna. She pocketed her phone. Outside it started to rain. She watched the drops hit the window. Remembered another rain. Another night. A small hand reaching for hers. The moment everything changed. Picture this, she whispered to herself. It's 2:47 a.m. And smiled. Because some moments, the crazy, dangerous, life-altering ones, were worth every complication that followed. Some children were worth protecting, even when protecting them meant losing pieces of yourself. Some families were chosen, not born. And some waitresses from Queens became something they never expected. Survivors, protectors, family. The rain continued to fall. Yvette turned back to her cafe, her customers, her life, and kept moving forward. Because that's what she'd always done. That's what she'd always do. One step at a time. One rainy night at a time. Forever changed by a small voice asking, "Can you walk me home?"